Welcome to a deep dive into, well, a really quite remarkable source. It claims to be the autobiography of, one of history's most debated figures, King Henry VIII.
And adding another layer, it apparently includes notes and commentary from his fool, Will Summers.
Which is just fascinating in itself. So this isn't your standard history lesson.
No, not at all. It's framed as a journey right into the king's own head, really, exploring how he saw his own life, his loves, his decisions, his struggles. It's his story, supposedly.
Exactly. And we've got a stack of material drawn from this source. I mean, everything from hints about his childhood, his dreams, right up to his final thoughts on power and everything else.
So our mission today is to really dig into this, to unpack this unique perspective and pull out the most maybe surprising bits, the key insights that, well, only Henry himself could really offer.
What did he think was happening? What did he actually feel behind it all?
That's the goal.
Okay, let's get into it. So we start right at the beginning, not with some ancient established line, but the making of a Tudor king. And this source, it doesn't really shy away from their less grand origins.
No, it calls them, pretty bluntly, Welsh adventurers, relying, it says, rather heavily on romantic adventures of both bed and battle to advance themselves.
Uh-huh. So, Owen Tudor then.
Yes, a
Yeah.
simple clerk of the wardrobe to Queen Catherine, Henry V's widow. That was the first link to royalty. Though Henry's genealogists later tried to spin that, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. Tracing the line back to King Cadwallader. Bit of image management there.
You could say that. And Henry VIII's own rise was anything but smooth.
Not preordained at all.
No. The source highlights all the discontent with Richard III, which helped Henry VII gain support in exile. His first try in 1484, well, as a disaster, Buckingham lost his head.
Right.
But the next year, landing in Wales with, what, maybe 2,000 men against Richard's 10,000.
Against the odds.
Massively. And he wins at Bosworth. Incredible victory, really. But a shaky start for the dynasty.
So, young Henry VIII, or Henry, he has a different kind of upbringing. The source paints him as, well, talented, but maybe a bit spoiled.
It really emphasizes his education, and especially his music. Virginals, flute, organ, he played them all. Apparently very well.
He thought so himself, anyway.
He did. Admits to impatience, thinking he was better than the adult musicians at just 7 years old.
And interestingly,
Will Summers' note backs this up. Says Henry was extraordinarily talented, probably better than the, quote, slipshod adult musicians at court then.
Huh. And he learned the courtly arts, too.
Oh, yes. Mastering, as he put it, first a show of temper, then smiles in favor. An easy lesson, he thought. Never slow to learn.
But what really jumps out is this love of sport and danger.
Definitely. He talks about seeking out forbidden jousts, foot combats, risking himself constantly. Seeking danger, he says, as a man on the desert seeks water.
Wow. Driven to test his bravery.
It reveals this inherent daring, almost reckless side right from the start.
And he was very aware of England's place in Europe at the time.
Acutely aware. He saw England, after the dynastic wars, as remote, maybe backward, even barbarous compared to, say, the Italian courts.
That contrast comes through strongly.
It does. He describes English life, wool, beer, bread, beef, dirty rushes on the floor, trestle tables. And then he thinks of Italy. Villas, glass windows, forks which were new, sophisticated food.
So he had this early sense that England needed to catch up, become more part of the European scene.
Exactly. A vision for England's place in the world.
And then the personal element shifts when he meets Catherine of Aragon.
Ah, yes. His description is full of youthful passion. Her beauty, her thick golden brown waves of hair compares her to literary figures,
Farrelane, lovely Enid.
Andromeda, even. He was completely captivated.
But she wasn't his immediate future, his older brother, Arthur. And the source describes Arthur's death hitting him hard.
Very hard. Suddenly, Henry writes, he's the only thing standing between the young Tudor dynasty and oblivion.
Just like that.
The news came in a curt message from the king. He saw his father weep, but felt excluded. Like his father never shared the sorrow or acknowledged Henry's grief. Just a brief announcement.
And that's where we get that line about his father.
I loved him. I hated him. Just incredibly revealing about that complex relationship, the pressure, the grief.
So how does he describe actually becoming king? The accession.
He recounts the ceremony, the people shouting "I" 3 times, the anointing, the actual physical weight of the crown.
Sevi is the head, etc.
Quite literally. He talks about vowing to do good for England, be a good and perfect knight. A sense of duty, but immense pressure, too.
And his first impressions of ruling. Not quite what he expected.
An immediate reality check.
Hmm.
Money. He realized how key it was. Some of these father's counselors apparently tried to obscure from the youngling.
Until Woolsey stepped in.
Right. Wolsey presented the exact figures. And that first council meeting, he found it incredibly boring, debating the cost of a coffin. That's what he says. His initial thought was, oh, being king is easy, so had it been planned to be, to lull me.
But that didn't last long.
No. He quickly felt he needed his own people, advisors not just held over from his father's time. So as Henry moves from that young prince to the king grappling with the job, the source really dives into his personal life, his marriages, the obsession with an heir.
Starting with Catherine of Aragon. Initially, it sounds like shared grief brought them together.
Yes, he frames it as a partnership of grief after early losses. They ordered extra masses together, increased piety, that sort of thing.
But then there's a strange shift described.
He reflects that their closeness, their sympathy, actually stifled the passion, smothering lust, he says, under a pillow of intimacy.
That's quite a phrase.
Isn't it? He concludes that lust, for him anyway, needed strangeness and mystery.
It's a fascinating insight, though maybe a bit self-serving, looking back.
Well, later in the source, he does admit, I knew nothing of women, or of my own nature either. So was it a genuine feeling he had then, or a later rationalization? The source kind of leaves that open for you to think about.
Their hopes rise again when Catherine gets pregnant for the first time.
He recalls her telling him, our prayers are answered. His joy was immense. Prince Henry is born, given his own household staff, immediately a huge symbol of hope.
But his death is mentioned almost briefly, heartbreakingly so.
Yes, and Catherine's suffering in childbirth is described very vividly, the ancient pain and later losses. There's one truly horrific detail.
Oh.
A monster infant, he calls it. Born with one eye, no nose, teeth. Catherine's reaction, just case who. It captures the horror.
God, unimaginable. And it's against this background, this desperate need for a male heir, that the Boleyns arrive.
Right. There's this memory he includes, almost nostalgic, of Henry, Catherine, and the Boleyns at Hever Castle with its best musk roses. He remembers blowing his hunting horn.
A simpler time, perhaps.
Seemingly. Mary Boleyn returns from France, having served under Francis, as the source puts it. Henry's take is cynical. He intended to explore France further, through her.
His rivalry with Francis even extended there.
Apparently so. It's quite revealing.
But then Anne Boleyn arrives. And everything changes.
Instantly. Will Sommers' note calls her Black Nan, the witch returned home. Henry describes this immediate, intense fascination, a strange bonding on the instant.
He describes her appearance.
In detail. Dark hair, creamy skin, those ice blue eyes, flawless complexion. He was clearly struck.
And the pursuit begins.
Yes, and it's riveting. She's initially nun-like, avoids him. She's volatile. There's this sharp exchange where she challenges him. Too far. You have had women for over 20 years.
Ouch!
He admits he hated her laugh, and her demand was clear. Marriage, the throne. In what order? She asks him, pointedly.
So the decision to seek the annulment, it wasn't just about Anne. Foreign policy played a part.
That's how he presents it, partly. The emperor, Charles V, was too strong after beating Francis, holding Rome. The Pope terrorized. Henry reflects he was acting like his father, arranging Mary's marriage for political reasons, and then realizes the Pope's situation could actually help him get the annulment.
So multiple factors converging. The great matter.
Exactly. And the source shows Wolsey's reaction discomfort, even horror, but disguised as mere discomfort. And when Wolsey failed...
Henry's description is quite sad, isn't it?
Yes, Wolsey lapped about my hand as a puppy. Henry felt sadness at his degradation. Sending Norris with the ring to Wolsey later is a small, complex detail.
Cardinal Campeggio tries to mediate, suggests Catherine become a nun?
He does. But Catherine's response, as recorded here, is firm. No vocation, she said, and only if Henry also took monastic vows.
Not likely.
Not at all. Her steadfastness really shines through in the account. At her prayers, wearing Spanish fashion, annoyed at being disturbed, confronting Henry directly. Is she to be your next mistress?
And the jewels, refusing to give them to Anne.
Defiant. Calls it a scandal of Christendom, bringing vituperation and infamy upon the king. She wouldn't yield. So, with the annulment stuck, Henry needed a new approach. And that's where Thomas Cromwell comes in.
He was looking for his own people, right, not his father's leftovers.
Exactly. Tired of the stale remnants. He liked Cromwell's pragmatism, apparently. That it was cumbersome to commit all things to paper. Liked his directness.
And felt he could trust him initially.
Seems so. Telling him, no one is here, Cromwell. You may speak freely. a sense of buoyancy, finding someone on his wavelength.
And this partnership leads directly to the break with Rome.
Absolutely. Cranmer's appointment as archbishop is described, well, rather unenthusiastically by Henry. His hangdog look, lack of enthusiasm, downcast.
But Henry was pleased.
Elated. He saw Cranmer as the key, the way to get a legitimate church in England, free from the Pope, even if, ironically, Cranmer's appointment was initially sanctioned by Rome.
And Parliament becomes important here too.
Yes, though Henry admits finding it demeaning to go to them, but necessary to avoid draining the treasury. He even notes being refused by them once and feeling impotent, having to recall citizens from abroad.
Then comes the oath, recognizing Elizabeth as heir.
A real loyalty test, forcing people to think about the meaning behind the words. And Thomas More's stand is highlighted.
Believing the act was against God's law.
Fundamentally, that no single part of Christendom could contradict the universal church. The source mentions his writing in the Tower Dialogue of Comfort, the four last things before his execution, starkly noted.
And then almost as quickly as she rose, Anne Boleyn falls. The source mentions her unpopularity.
Yes, the people did not like her. Loyalty to Catherine, dislike of the king marrying a subject, Henry admits his love overrode that initially, and there's a poignant line about forbidding her betrothal to Henry Percy.
But years later, how I was to wish I had allowed it. Hindsight.
Bitter hindsight. The accusations against her are brutal in the source. Wicked crime of adultery, treacherous crime, listing specific acts like with Norris.
George Boleyn's trial. Testimony from his own wife.
Yes, Jane Rochford. And Henry notes George read the charge about the king's impotence and laughed. Jarringly.
Henry's motivation for her death. It's presented quite chillingly here.
He believed she was a witch. He wanted freedom from the marriage before she died. Sending Cranmer to offer mercy, sparing her the flames if she confessed to witchcraft, having ensnared him. He needed a justification.
To nullify everything.
Precisely. Anne's final words are quoted, powerful, and as Henry saw it, maybe laced with mockery. I am come hither to die, I will speak nothing against it. But then praising him as a merciful prince, a good and gentle sovereign lord.
He took that badly.
He seems to have read irony into it. And her remains were treated shockingly. Left literally to shift for themselves, no funeral service.
And then the ghost sighting, immediately after.
Yes, a white figure being dragged backwards, mournful cries. He describes being tormented by it later in his sleep, wondering if others saw it or if it was just for him.
It raises huge questions about his state of mind, doesn't it? Guilt manifesting, or genuine belief in the supernatural.
The source leaves you wondering. Shifting focus, the dissolution of the monasteries is presented as Cromwell's grand design.
And Henry enjoyed it.
Admits enjoying seeing stones pulled down, glass shattering, burning miracle statues. Plus, he notes it refilled the treasury depleted by French wars. Very practical.
Then the Pilgrimage of Grace. He describes it quite graphically.
Like the pox, a great pustule of rebels. His response wasn't immediate force, but waiting. He lanced it and let it drain away and dry up.
He mentions the leaders, Darcy, Hussey,
Yeah.
and foreign involvement.
He hints at it. Chapuis, Cardinal Pole, languishing in Flanders.
Yeah.
But he reflects on Darcy as an honorable, thoughtful man, despite leading the rebellion. A complex view.
Moving into his later life, the relationships stay, well, complicated. Jane Seymour enters the picture very differently.
Yes, silently, extending her hands, her face showing otherworldly love and kindness. He contrasts her quietness with Anne's wild strangeness.
He saw her as a healing force.
Yes, reconciling him with subjects, maybe even himself. Her death, after giving him Edward, is noted with simple finality.
Then the Anne of Cleves marriage, arranged by Cromwell.
And Henry's reaction is famously blunt in this account. I like her not. The Flanders mare nickname. He comments on her headdress as looking like the wrinkled ears of elephants.
But the wedding night.
He calls it the calmest bridal night, perhaps humorously.
But there was a hidden motive here regarding Cromwell.
Apparently so. Henry suggests his real purpose was to catch Cromwell out. He reflects on Cromwell's power, his mysteriousness, we don't know his desires, lacking normal ambitions, talk of him being the devil.
He saw Cromwell as dangerous, but hesitated.
Admits he saw the danger, but lacked the courage to act sooner.
Then Catherine Howard arrives,
Yeah.
a return to youth, almost.
For a moment, a lovely maiden, glowing skin, dark lashes, those ice blue eyes again. He felt completely overcome initially, love, desire.
But it soured quickly.
Her superficiality comes through, reacting tritely, asking about her looks, calling his feelings carnal only. He notes appointing her relative Dereham as secretary who looked like a pirate in Henry's eyes.
And then the betrayal is discovered.
Mary Hall's letter. affairs with Mannix, Dereham. Henry's initial reaction, nonsense, furious disbelief.
Cranmer investigates.
Yes, described as approachable by the extremists, suggesting he was willing to push it. The account details the brutal recall of Catherine's behavior, pretend chastity, the lewd wedding night.
Her confession letter, it omitted Culpeper.
A calculated lie, the source implies. And then the really bizarre, shocking detail mentioned, the pebble.
Found in her womb.
Yes, described as a filthy practice, a custom in the Middle East to prevent conception. Henry attributes it to an evil Arab physician from her childhood.
That sounds utterly desperate, an attempt to explain away the depth of the betrayal.
Perhaps. The betrayal involved Dereham, Culpeper, Lady Rochford, the Howards. It was extensive.
The executions followed, Culpeper specifically.
Taken to Tyburn for commoners, despite his noble status. Henry calls him the serpent I had nourished in my bosom, regretting a past pardon for rape and murder, saying his mercy created a monster.
And Catherine Howard's execution, practicing on the block.
Unsettling details, wanting to make a pretty showing, asking about the best angle, and her final words, quoted in the source.
I'd die a queen, but I would rather die the wife of Culpeper.
Devastating for Henry to hear, the account suggests. He was tormented by it.
And another ghost sighting followed this.
Yes, the white figure being dragged backwards, this time in the long gallery near the Chapel Royal.
This theme of haunting just intensifies, along with his physical decline.
Undeniable in the account. The leg ulcer, constant pain, can't ride, a sponge of disease. He saw it as sent by Satan. Headaches, the ragings, needing his pretty emerald syrup.
Looking at his key relationships towards the end, Will Summers becomes more than a fool.
Yes, a listener and wise commentator after Jane's death. Henry valued his honesty, quoting Will, saying, I know that you would trade the remainder of your life to speak to Jane again. A moment of real vulnerability.
And Charles Brandon, his lifelong friend.
Yes, loved me when I was yet the second son, sided with him against Arthur, shared the French campaigns. Brandon's death hit him hard. The one person who had truly loved me was gone.
Visiting his coffin saying, I love you.
And noting he'd never said that to any woman. A stark admission of emotional isolation.
His view of Cromwell remains complex.
Useful, a diabolical genius, but dangerous. Henry describes liking the man while knowing he was bad, that internal struggle hanging on that human balance. After Cromwell's death, a pragmatic regret. Pity, I could have used Cromwell now.
And his daughters Mary and Elizabeth.
Fraught relationships. Mary seemed politically a threat to Edward. Conflicting feelings, loved her so, but pushed her away when she sided with Catherine, questioning what was missing in him. Initially a disappointment, wrong sex from the wrong woman, but also intriguing, the only one not afraid of him, untouchable by my wrath.
And Edward, the longed-for heir.
The savior. Household staff from birth, resembling the lost Prince Henry. And this strange detail about his connection with snakes.
His final reflections sound lonely.
Very much so. Sleeping quite alone and unattended. Savoring solitude but missing intimacy. Appointing the protector council for Edward, he tried to balance factions but saw the men as small, colorless, timid.
The Mary Rose sinking features too.
George Carew's quote, I have the sort of nays I cannot rule. The plague revealing true natures, the 7 deadly sins. His ship, a summary of myself. Believing England was inviolate at sea.
A late visit to a loyal servant, a regret.
A debt, neglected and left too late. Acknowledging his own huge size, an effort to drag about.
And the ghosts again, Catherine Howard's especially.
Believing her spirit was powerful, possessed by the evil one, wanting his ruin, wondering why others he wronged, Buckingham and more. Cromwell didn't haunt him too.
And his final feeling about England.
Divided, unhappy. Using the Scots, Lowland, Highland, Isles, Border Scots as an example of fragmentation. A sense of unresolved issues at the very end.
Wow. That really was quite the deep dive into Henry VIII's world and specifically his mind, as this source presents it.
It really is. We've traced him from that talented, perhaps overly confident youth through the obsession with glory and heirs, the betrayals, the losses, right to the end. A solitary figure, battling illness, regret, maybe even ghosts.
It's just such a powerful reminder, isn't it, that these huge historical figures, they were driven by intensely personal things, fears, desires, conflicts, and the story we tell ourselves, like Henry's story here, well, that shapes everything.
Absolutely. So what does it all mean for us looking back? I mean, this count really makes you think about the power of narrative, doesn't it? Especially when it's supposedly coming from the person right at the center of it all.
How does that one voice, that single perspective, shape how we see an entire era? how much of what we think we know is filtered through their own view of themselves, whether that view is, carefully crafted or brutally honest.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you, listening. Think about your own life. The story you tell yourself about who you are, why you did certain things. How different is that from how someone else might see it?
It's fundamentally human, isn't it? Just played out on this massive historical stage with Henry.
And we'll leave you with this incredible admission from the source, supposedly from Henry himself. I knew nothing of women or of my own nature either.
Think about that. A king whose choices affected millions, who literally changed the course of history, admitting such profound uncertainty about himself. What does that mean? Definitely something to mull over.